Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And today we're going to be giving my NBA trade deadline grades. I know this video is a little bit behind what we had initially anticipated. Part of that was my voice kind of is given out on me after live streaming so much last week. But also, I just wanted to give myself a little bit of time to actually, recover all the trades, look at everything that's gone down, watch a little bit when it comes to these new players in new places, and I think it's going to create a better video. I just didn't want to rush out any content when I didn't feel 100% confident, both in my voice and my actual analysis. So I wanted to take a little bit of time here to reacclimate myself to the shaping of the league. So I hope you guys do enjoy the work still going in. So please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And I just want to thank everyone who stopped in for our NBA trade deadline live stream. So it was phenomenal. I had so much fun with all of you. You guys asked a bunch of great questions. I felt like we covered the NBA in its totality to the best, honestly, on YouTube that I feel like we could have. I feel like the coverage of all 30 teams went really, really well. You guys had a lot of great ideas for trades. Of course, not all of them came to fruition, but I felt like I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did as well for those who were in there. And let's keep rolling. So here's a quick guide on kind of my reasoning and my rationale for some of these grades. Grades will not be equal. For example, the Phoenix Suns traded for Kevin Durant. In a vacuum, any team getting Kevin Durant, you'd say, oh, that's great, right? But what if Orlando gave up 4 picks that were unprotected, a pick swap, and 2 really good young players for Kevin Durant, right? Things are not equal across the league. So in some cases, you might say, well, that's not fair. You gave this team this grade. Yeah, because teams are in different situations. Teams have different things going on. So it's all relative. I just think you guys need to keep that in mind. For my A grades, it means I love it. Minuses and pluses are kind of right in that same realm anyway. B, I think it's a pretty good trade for them. I think that, for the most part, the moves they made have benefited them. C, I'm not really sure if I like it, and also kind of leaves yourself to be like in a really bad situation if things go wrong. The A trades, even if stuff goes wrong, your outcome is still pretty good and you can justify going all in on that type of move. B, you're like, okay, maybe it doesn't make you the best you can be, but at least there's, some, reality to it that makes me believe that there's going to be something nice. C, either the downside is super high or it just doesn't present as much upside. D, grades, I'm not really sure what the plan is, right? You're making a move and I just don't really see the rationale or the thought process behind it. And for the 1 F grade we have in today's video, it means fire the GM. That's what F stands for, because there's a team out there that I thought needed to do some stuff that didn't make the moves that I thought they needed to. Now, we'll talk about what that looked like and what I necessarily would have done, especially by the end of the video. You guys will have a good rationale on what I was really thinking. So let's go ahead and jump into it here with the Atlanta Hawks. See, their biggest move was acquiring Saddiq Bey, which I really, really liked. They did give up a plethora of second-round picks. You saw 2 of them go to Golden State, and you see a few of them as well go out the door to Portland. So they did give up a lot to sneak in to grab Saddiq Bey, but I did really like that. Now, that deal almost fell apart, which is a very unique, different situation that we typically don't see in the NBA. Now, they also gave up Justin Holiday, who's in the process of being bought out. He will land with the Dallas Mavericks. It sounds like they gave up Frank Kaminsky in that as well. So there were some moving pieces here. Atlanta traded a lot of second-round picks. The second deal here, Holiday and Kaminsky, is to save money. So the reason it's not an A for me is they did shorten some of their depth at the back end. Now, I know Holiday and Kaminsky, Hawks fans are going to say, well, those aren't key pieces for us. I know they're not. But at the end of the day, just the given situation, you gave up a ton of second-round picks in this for Saddiq Bey, who I know a lot of people, if you don't watch him very, very closely, you're going to say, whoa, he's a really nice bench scorer, 3-and-D wing. He doesn't play much defense, and he's not that great of a three-point shooter. It's kind of a misnomer, just because there's an archetype in the league that's really prevalent. Doesn't mean that every role-playing wing is one of those guys, and Saddiq Bey is not really one of those guys. And for Atlanta, it doesn't really clear a lot of things up for me. It's not a no-brainer move, in my opinion. Saddiq Bey doesn't make them all that much better, in my opinion. But at the same time, it definitely doesn't hurt them. I think it's a pretty good trade. In fact, I think it's, on the high end of a pretty good trade, just given the fact that they get a nice young player who I think's proven he will stick in this league for about 10 to 12 years. for relatively low cost in what was Landry Fields' first deadline as GM. I think he did an okay job, so I give him a B+. The Boston Celtics here, I give an A, and the reason why I give them an A, there's really no downside here. You give up a very low 2023 second round pick and a 2029 second rounder. So again, 6 years from now, plus Justin Jackson's contract, just something that they did not have any concern about. Justin Jackson would not have played any minutes for them. And they get a guy in Mike Muscala, who has actually had a very underrated season for Oklahoma City. I think he's a very, very nice center who can step out behind the three-point line, knock it down. He's been a part of a lot of high-efficiency lineups, and he gives Boston another depth big to maybe rely on, especially with Al Horford kind of aging the way that he is. I think Muscala fits in very, very well on a team-friendly contract at $3.5 million. It's a very solid deal for the Boston Celtics. Now, if this was another team and not Boston, does Muscala really change your world? Not really, but I think Boston has the depth and the means to go far in the playoffs, and adding one more quality depth center like Muscala, who I think can actually play 10 to 15 minutes a night in the postseason, I do think it goes a long way in matching up with a Milwaukee or presenting some issues to Philly, who they have some questions when it comes to backup center. So I think Boston did a very nice job here landing Muscala and also taking him away from potential other teams interested in landing his services. Brooklyn here now, I'm going to give them an A as well. And this is going to be probably one of the most hot topic questions of the video is how did I feel about Brooklyn? They trade Kyrie Irving, they trade Markieff Morris, and in that deal, they come back with Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 first, and 2 second rounders. And then they also make a deal that ended up becoming a 4-team deal between Phoenix, Milwaukee, Indiana, and Brooklyn. You see they land 4 completely unprotected firsts from Phoenix with a pick swap in 2028. They get Jay Crowder, who ultimately ends up going to Milwaukee. In return, they get a bunch of second-round picks. I know second-rounders also got routed to Indiana in that deal to take on some money, which I think is very important. This is another note why the Nets get an A. Then Mikal Bridges, he's the key piece that the Nets get back in this, as well as Cam Johnson. They get 2 very good young wings who have proven to be key parts of winning basketball, even in the postseason. I think Mikal Bridges is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. If you look at the reality here, I think Mikal Bridges would have been traded for at least 3 first-round picks. I know there's a report out there that, some team offered 4. My guess is that there were some protections on those 4. I'm talking 3 unprotected firsts. If you're looking 2023, 2025, 2027, my guess is Memphis would have been willing to offer that, as well as potentially New Orleans and or Indiana. So you're looking at massive compensation here for Kevin Durant. I know it stings to trade Kevin Durant, but given their circumstance, again, this is why things are not equal across the playing board. The Nets really had to make a decision here, and I think they made a really good one. They gave up TJ Warren, they gave up Durant, they give up 3 really good players here if you include Kyrie Irving into that, but they walk out with a ton of assets. They've netted themselves 6 first-round picks that they can trade. They netted themselves a collection of second-rounders as well. They've really restocked their treasure chest when it comes to draft picks that they can move. And then Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, without those 2 guys, it's a tough situation. But one thing I want to say about Brooklyn, considering this a rebuild, they're already better than Houston, and Houston's already about 2 years into their rebuild. That's why I think Brooklyn did really, really well in this. If you had to ask me right now who wins in a 7-game series between the Nets and Rockets 2 years into their rebuild, the Nets would sweep them, probably. So I think Brooklyn's in a very, very solid position. Yes, I know they don't own their draft picks. Houston actually, funny enough, does. But I think Brooklyn's in a spot where they can actually probably go out and hunt for a new star this trade or this offseason. Guys like Trae Young, Karl Anthony Towns will be 2 names to watch, but given their situation, I think Brooklyn's in a very, very good spot, and I think that they've really recovered nicely just given the situation. Now the Charlotte Hornets here, who I give a D grade to. Mitch Kupchak did not have a good trade deadline, in my opinion. They trade Mason Plumlee out to the Clippers for Reggie Jackson, who they immediately bought out, and a 2028 second-round pick. I saw people on TikTok trying to float the idea that Mason Plumlee was worth a first-rounder. That was absolutely crazy to me. The only thing, though, is with how many second-round picks we're getting traded, especially for quality role players, to only get one second-rounder for Plumlee just seems below market value, given how well he's played this season. I don't fault them for trading him in general, but I felt like they could have maybe gotten a little bit more had they played the market a little bit better, and probably found a deal out there that's better than them, better for them, than just one second round pick out in 2028. And then when it comes to trading Jalen McDaniels away, to walk away from this deal with arguably the worst, mainstay player in Svi Mikhailuk, a 2023 second round pick, and a 2027 second round pick. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for a younger wing who I think is going to have staying power in the league in McDaniels. Of course, we'll talk about this trade for the other teams as well a little bit later on, but I don't really understand Charlotte's deadline. They traded a good player right now for, I think, below market value in Plumlee. They traded a young player for way below market value, in my opinion, in McDaniels. And I just think Charlotte had a rough deadline, and one that they didn't get better, and one that they didn't maximize some of their better assets, like Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, who's an expiring. They maybe had some better options out there to make a trade that they never pulled the trigger on. And to be honest, I don't think that they've accelerated the rebuild. In fact, they maybe slowed it down a little bit after trading McDaniels away. Chicago here now, I'm going to give them a C. They didn't make any moves that were really prominent. With where they're currently at, I think the biggest thing to watch for is if Russ does end up getting bought out by the Utah Jazz, what happens with him? Does he go to Chicago? Does that reinvigorate this team? It's just, I don't know if I believe in this team. I'm not a big Vucevic fan. I never have been. I never will be. I just think with the way that the NBA is played right now, I think defensive-minded centers are kind of the litmus test of good teams versus bad teams. If you have a center who can defend in multiple types of pick and roll coverage, you're probably going to be a pretty good team. And if you don't, you're going to be kind of a middling to bad team. I think that's just kind of the reality of the situation right now in the league. And the Bulls, with Vucevic, DeRozan, they're old. I think trading Zach LaVine would have been genius for them if they would have been able to come to a deal. They didn't, of course. So I just think here, the Bulls didn't get any worse at the deadline, which is why I give them a C. But I think that there's some, high risk here because their roster's aging. Vooch is heading toward free agency. It's possible you lose him for nothing. I just don't love the direction of the Bulls, and I think that they would have been benefited by making a couple moves at the deadline. Now with the Cavaliers, another team that did not make a move at the deadline, I'm going to end up giving them a B. And you might say, whoa, you just gave the Bulls a C and the Cavs a B, and they both did nothing. Well, the Cavaliers are walking away with Danny Green through the buyout market. And then also for Cleveland, I think one really important thing to remember here is this team's young. They're very good this year, and they just didn't really have a lot to go out and trade, right? They already made the move for Donovan Mitchell. They're in a good spot. I just don't think the Cavaliers needed to panic. Would I have liked them to make an upgrade on the roster? For sure, I would have, especially with how many second-round picks were traded this year. I feel like the Cavaliers could have gotten involved in a few different places, which is why they're not getting an A. But a B is, I don't think they hurt themselves at all. Did I consider them contenders this year over Philly, Boston, or Milwaukee? The reality to that is no for me. Could they have made a move to maybe help them? Yes, but is there a move out there that was substantial enough to take them from my fourth best team in the East to being the best team in the East? No, I just don't really believe that. So for Cleveland, standing pat, I don't have an issue with. I give them a B. A small upgrade would have been nice, but for the most part, I don't hate it. Now we have my Dallas Mavericks, and you guys are going to notice there's been a change after watching Kyrie Irving's first 3 games. By the time I'm recording this in Dallas, right after I'm recording this, he'll play his 4th. Dallas, I'm going to give a C. Of course, the day that this trade happened, I infamously gave it an F, and there's still potential for it to turn into an F. The one reason I've changed my mind a little bit is Kyrie Irving is so dynamic, and if he plays this season, if he stays on the court for the Mavericks, this could be an A trade, especially if he resigns, and if the drama disappears, Kyrie Irving with the Mavericks could be phenomenal. This is going to be the most skilled player Luka Doncic arguably ever plays with. at the peak of his prime, right? Dirk Nowitzki is a better player than Kyrie Irving, but not when Luka played with him. And for Kyrie Irving, if Dallas becomes his home, this works out really well for Dallas. But as you can notice, I chose the letter C in flames because it's very possible everything does blow up into flames, and that Kyrie potentially leaves for the Los Angeles Lakers. The Mavs lose two of their top 4 or 5 players in Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie. Yes, Josh Green kind of fills DFS's role a little bit, but at the same time, you could have had both of them still. So if Kyrie leaves for nothing, it hurts. And I think that's going to be, the problem here. If Kyrie leaves, it's franchise defining and potentially damning. Luka Doncic could potentially leave in 2 to 3 years by demanding a trade if things are not looking up in Dallas. So they put all their eggs in the Kyrie Irving basket, something I wouldn't recommend doing. But man, has he been fun to watch. So again, I bumped my grade up here quite a bit for Dallas, but I do think it's worth noting that this is probably the most volatile trade of the deadline. Kyrie could turn the Mavericks into an A type team where this trade is a no-brainer for them, or it could be, the beginning of the end for the Dallas Mavericks as we currently know them. The Denver Nuggets here now, I'm going to give them a B in this. They gave up Bones Highland and Devon Reed in a deal for Thomas Bryant. I think that giving up on Bones early is the reason why it's not an A. I know that with the culture that they have there, Bones clearly was not fitting in. Malone lost all trust in playing him as well. He was getting consistent DNP CDs towards the deadline. And even before that, his minutes were consistently dwindling, kind of showing Denver's hand that they were going to trade him. To only get 2 second-rounders is tough, especially when they get rerouted in a deal for Thomas Bryant, who is a quality backup center. Now, does backup center change Denver's world? No, but it helps come playoff time. The 10 to 14 minutes a game that Nikola Jokic is going to be on the bench. Denver now has a rebounding beast in Thomas Bryant, who I think defensively struggles, but at least he can clean the glass a little bit. He's going to help in those minutes again that Jokic is out of the game. So a B here. Do I think it does? Do I think it changes Denver's long-term upside? No. Do I think it really changes if Denver is a contender this year or not? Not really, but I don't think it hurts them at all. And I think you never know, right? I always think about Leon Poe scoring like 28 points in an NBA Finals game against the Los Angeles Lakers back in 2008. How much that changed the series. Does Thomas Bryant have a game like that in him in the playoffs? Possibly. So that's why I wouldn't sleep on this trade at all for the Denver Nuggets. I think that overall their deadline was okay. The Detroit Pistons here now, I'm going to give a C. And while I really like the idea of buying Wiseman, I don't know if I like the idea of buying Wiseman at the price point of giving up Saddiq Bey. Now, I do like the idea of getting off of Kevin Knox's contract. I never understood why they gave that to him to begin with. But Bey, who was drafted much later than James Wiseman, has been better than James Wiseman early in their careers. Now, 2 years from now, will Wiseman be better? That's what Detroit's really banking on. I just don't know. Their positional needs do not scream center, right? They have a ton of centers already on the roster. You look at, you got Jalen Duren, who I love. Isaiah Stewart's a nice big man in this league who very versatile, switchable, just like Duren as well. And then you've got Nerlens Noel, Marvin Bagley. I just don't think that they really had a need for this. I do like the upside of Wiseman still. I don't know. This is one of those where I have troubles kind of figuring out what I like about this, because I like Wiseman's upside. I just don't know if I like it as much in Detroit, given their current front court players. And I just don't think that they really had a need to make a move like this one. Now we have the Golden State Warriors, who I'm going to give actually a C+ in this. Giving up Wiseman hurts. You, of course, have the sunk cost of, hey, this is the guy we drafted second overall. And now you trade him for a guy you already had on your roster last year that you let walk in free agency in Gary Payton II. Of course, this was the most dramatic trade of the deadline when it comes to potentially having this trade nixed because of a failed physical by GP2 for the Warriors, but they ended up going through with it. They do have 2 second-round picks coming in with Gary Payton II, and Washing your hands with James Wiseman hurts, but the one thing I really like about this deal and why I am a little bit higher on it than I think a lot of other people would naturally be is because we know GP2 really fits with Golden State. He was pivotal for them winning a title last year. And given his injury, yes, if he was healthy, this trade maybe is a B for them. It sounds like he's going to miss a month, but when he comes in, he's not going to miss a beat. He knows what's expected of him. And I think he's going to really help them. You look at their defensive rating from last year to this year, it is significantly worse this season. And a big reason why is the increase in minutes for Jordan Poole and the departure of GP2. Well, he's back in the fold now, and I think the Warriors come playoff time will hopefully find their identity again once Curry, Peyton II are both healthy. There's your starting backcourt, in my opinion. The Houston Rockets here now, I'm going to give a C grade to them as well. Getting the second round picks and Holiday Kaminsky, I think that's a smart move. Really no downside there. Now the other ones, I don't know. You give up Eric Gordon and you also give up, basically some young players in Bruno Fernando and Garrison Matthews or whatever, right? I don't really care about Fernando. I don't care about Matthews. But with how everyone was posturing on Eric Gordon, really the only thing that they land from this Eric Gordon, first of all, they get dead money in Wall and Danny Green, who they've ended up buying out. But they also, and they bought out Justin Holiday too. But they also at this point only get to really move up their pick maybe 4, 5, 6 spots. In the first round. It's valuable, right? It's not bad, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't change the world for me. Yes, they get some assets, but I would have really liked the deadline for them if they were able to go out and get a high-level wing player, a Mikal Bridges, a Cam Johnson. I know there were reports that they were in on both of those guys. I think those players would have really moved around this franchise and in a positive way. I would have loved it for Houston if they got something done there. There's maybe a good reason why they didn't, but ultimately, I think that given their current situation, at some point you want to start winning games, and I don't think these moves help them do that at all, to be honest, which is why it's a C. They didn't get worse, but I just don't think they really got better at all. The Indiana Pacers, they used their cap space, and to me, this is an A. Just given their situation, they had money open on the books. They get incentivized heavily, 3 second-round picks and a young player in Jordan Nwora. And they also have to take in the contracts of George Hill, Serge Ibaka, who are both expiring. Basically, they just took in money that ends this season, and they got incentivized heavily to do it with a young player who can shoot. I think it's a good fit next to Halliburton and Mathurin. Even though Nwora at best in the NBA is probably going to play 10 to 15 minutes a night, still a young player who can help them long-term, can fit into their, the back end of their rotation. They get 3 second-rounders, moves that, or picks that can help them make other moves in the future. For Indiana, really not having to give up anything. The only thing that they really had to do was waive Goga Bitadze, who I think was already going to be done in Indiana anyway, to make this happen. This is a no-brainer for them in my eyes. I think it does help them actually move forward because they now have, with their 3 first-round picks this year, they've added 3 more second-round picks. So come NBA draft time, there's probably some moves that they can make, whether that means moving up, moving into future years. Out of this draft, there's a lot of options. Now, this draft is loaded, so I think having a ton of picks this year could be really good. A guy like Trace Jackson-Davis in the second round could really help them too. So I think Indiana's in a good spot. They've got some nice young pieces as well already on the roster. I think the trade deadline went fairly well for them. Now, I would have loved to see them go get an OG Anunoby or a Mikal Bridges, but ultimately, standing pat, they did the right thing here, at least turning cap space into draft picks in the way that they did. Here we see the LA Clippers. I give them a B+. I hate giving up Luke Kennard. I really like Luke Kennard. I think he's on a very team-friendly deal. I think there's always a role for shooters in the NBA. But getting 3 second-round picks and Eric Gordon, who I think gives them a different type of guard that they need, someone who's a little bit more downhill, a little bit stockier, a little more switchable than Kennard is, kind of fits their overall team defense. Getting Plumlee, I thought was a really nice move for them, giving up Reggie Jackson, who's just been flat out bad this year, and only having to give up a 2028 second-round pick. And then also jumping in on Bones. Again, I think that's a very smart move for them. All in all, they've made some nice moves. The reason it's not an A, I don't think Eric Gordon and Mason Plumlee make you title contenders. And that's kind of the pressure on the Clippers this year. Bones Highland definitely doesn't help in that regard either for this season. again, I like their moves. I'm going to give them a B plus. I think all their moves were good or pretty good. I just don't know if they were good enough for where this team really wants to go with Paul George and Kawhi. So yes, maybe I am being a little skeptical and maybe a little harsh on them. For 3 trades, I think that they did very well in. I just don't know if they did well enough, and that's really my big concern for a team that their focus should be on winning a title. So we'll see if they can do it, but I don't think Eric Gordon and Plumlee moved the needle enough for me. The Lakers here at this spot, I'm going to give them an A. And the only reason why is, again, circumstantially here. Rob Pelinka had this team backed into a corner with terrible GMing, terrible decision-making. The Russell Westbrook trade was a disaster from the get-go. I was the only person on YouTube saying it. I got a lot of hate when I said it, that the Lakers were going to be bad. I was right. Everybody else was wrong. But ultimately now you look at this situation and they pivot out of it. It does cost them one of those first-round picks, which I hate. It's top 4 protected, but the nice thing is that backup is only their 2027 second. So because of the step-in rule, they still have their 2029 first they can trade. And ultimately, with where they're currently at, I think the best case scenario here is this team starts to win some games. You know, you get Mo Bamba, you get 2 second-round picks as well, getting off of Thomas Bryant, who no longer wanted to be there. Good, very good business, by the way, signing a guy on a minimum like Bryant and being able to flip him around for second-round picks. I think that's a very good overall move for the team, just given the fact that they signed him 7-8 months ago. And then also trading away Russ, that pick, Toscano Anderson and Damian Jones, who just wasn't really that good, never has been that good, to get D'Lo, Beasley, Vando. I like it. They're kind of the new look Timberwolves a little bit. Of course, they did give up Patrick Beverley as well. But all in all, I think the Lakers did well this trade deadline. I think that they're in a better spot than they were, you know, a week or two ago. There's no question about that. Now, are they good enough to make a push in the playoffs? I'd be skeptical on that. But I do think that they're at least maybe good enough now to get into the play-in, which that's not certain, right? They're a 13 seed right now at the time I'm recording this. And LeBron's dealing with a little bit of a foot injury. But if the Lakers can catch some fire here, it's definitely a good move for them. And they still have flexibility this offseason, just given Mo Bamba's not fully guaranteed next year. D'Lo's on an expiring. Beasley as a team option. Vando's a very valuable contract around the league. It's possible we could see them pivot and still maybe target a guy like Kyrie Irving in free agency as well. Memphis Grizzlies here now. I'm going to give them a B+. I really like Luke Kennard for them. Getting off of, you know, Danny Green's contract and, you know, moving off of some second rounders and kind of the other stuff that we saw here. You know, I think all in all, they did a very good job. Adding in a shooter, Memphis's offense clearly needed a little bit of a jolt, especially in the half court. A movement shooter like Luke Kennard can go a really long way in helping you catch up in games. You know, you see a lineup of him and Desmond Bane on the floor together with John Morant. That's going to be a problem for teams to defend. There's no question about that. But then also the minutes when Desmond Bane's out of the game, I think Luke Kennard kind of fills a similar role. Now, he's not as dynamic and as dominant as Desmond Bane's been at times, but I think he's a very underrated shooter. If you go look at his shooting splits throughout his career, he's been very, very good. I think he's an underrated ball handler. He was asked to do that a lot in Detroit, found success doing it, wasn't forced to do that very often in LA with the Clippers. And I think Memphis gets a good player here. And yes, defensively, he's got his limitations, but with Memphis having Triple J behind him, you know, maybe it gets Jaren into a few more fouls a little bit quicker in the game, with Kennard getting blown by a little bit more frequently than maybe the Grizzlies would want. But at the end of the day, they need more offense. They found it, and I think they did a good job here. That's why I give them a B+ at the trade deadline. The Miami Heat did not really make a move. Of course, they trade Dedmon, get out of the luxury tax. That doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't change their their window for winning or losing this year. So for me, I give them a C. I don't think they needed to go out and make a big, strong move. I thought that they would have, maybe around Lowry or Duncan Robinson and their contracts. They ultimately did not. I give them a C. I don't think they're good enough to win the East this year. I don't think they're really good enough to push for the East this year. Had they made a bigger move, maybe they would have had a shot at it. But ultimately, I give Miami a C. Don't love their current direction. Don't love their current situation, but I don't hate it either. Milwaukee, at this spot, I'm going to give them an A. They get Jay Crowder for a whole bunch of second rounders and guys who weren't going to be in their playoff rotation. George Hill, Serge Ibaka, Jordan Nwora were all zeros for them. They were not going to play in the postseason. Now they have a guy who does. It's clearly a win for them. It gives you another body to throw at. Maybe a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. It gives you a body to take away from teams looking to find a way to maybe slow down Giannis. And we saw Milwaukee when they won a title. PJ Tucker was a big part of that team. And if you're looking for a PJ Tucker clone, I think Jay Crowder's as close as you can get in the NBA. He's big, strong, physical, can guard multiple positions. The biggest thing is how consistent will he be as a three-point shooter? That's a good question. Now, I think in Milwaukee, he's going to get pretty good looks just playing around Giannis. So for the most part, I love this. If Crowder plays really well for them, I think that this could be one of the better trades of the deadline, honestly. And they got him for really pennies on the dollar, in my opinion. Minnesota here now. With their move, I'm going to give them an A as well here. This is a change from when I was live streaming for this trade. I gave them a B+ initially. And after thinking about it a little bit more, I've upped the grade a little bit. The reason why, I think they got a better player for them right now with Mike Conley. Yes, he is 9 years older than D'Angelo Russell, but I think this trade makes them better right now. They also added 3 second-round picks in the deal for a guy who was an expiring contract in D'Angelo Russell. 2 of them are Utah's down the road. If Utah does decide to bottom out, we could see those picks be, maybe top 35, which is close to a first-round pick. And then also 2024, yes, it's, least favorable. So it's not going to be a very good draft pick, given the fact that it's between Washington and Memphis' selection. But you also get Nickeil Alexander-Walker here, who's a somewhat intriguing upside player. He's a former first-round pick, was drafted by the Pelicans. Then, of course, traded to the Jazz in the deal with Joe Ingles last year. And he finds his way to Minnesota. Could maybe carve out a rotation spot for them a year or two from now. I'd be surprised to see him really play that much this season. It's kind of been the MO for Nickeil in the league. It seems like we're always waiting for him. But ultimately, I think Minnesota did well in this trade, and I give them an A just because I think Conley fits their team much better than D'Angelo Russell. Now at this spot, I'm going to give the New Orleans Pelicans a C for this trade, moving off Devontae Graham and 4 second-round picks for Josh Richardson. Clearly, the move was to get off money. Devontae Graham, I said it when they signed him. I said it when they traded away stuff to get him, even in that sign and trade, that it was an overpay. That was one of the few examples where Charlotte did really well in a deal lately. Devontae Graham is just not good. Yes, they get off of him, but Josh Richardson does not move the needle for a team that I thought, if they looked at themselves and said, hey, if Zion gets healthy before the playoffs, we should have a shot to go deep in the postseason. I thought that they would have looked at themselves that way. Clearly, they did not really feel that way about themselves, just given some of the recent play that we've seen and some of the injuries between Ingram and Zion specifically. Maybe they're a little hesitant on that. But to give up 4 second-round picks just because you had a bad contract, I don't love it. But circumstantially, it makes sense to at least open up some money so it's not terrible. It's not a D or an F level trade. But I don't really think this made them better. And I think they took a small step back here in terms of the potential avenues that they had just to get off of that Graham contract. Here we have the New York Knicks, who I'm going to give a solid B to. I really like Josh Hart. I think he's a really great fit in New York. I think he's a great fit playing with Tom Thibodeau playing for Tom Thibodeau, and playing with Jalen Brunson. The only issue I have here is you give up that 2023 first round pick, which is lottery protected, but it is New York's pick this season. If it doesn't, or if it does not convey, so if New York misses the postseason, it becomes 4 second round picks, which is, you think, okay, that's not bad. But in my opinion, the Knicks make the playoffs. So you are giving up a first round pick for Josh Hart, who is basically an expiring contract. My guess is he stays in New York long term. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if I love the idea of giving up first round picks for Josh Hart's of the world. Now, I think Hart's a good player. I think he fits New York, which is why it's not a bad trade. Remember, B means pretty good. I think this is a pretty good deal for the Knicks, but it's not going to be the A trade in my eyes. Like I think some other people around the league are going to deem it that way. I just don't really see it in that same light. Here, I'm going to give the Oklahoma City Thunder a D for their trade deadline. Darius Baisley out the door. They take in Dario Saric, who has a bigger contract. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. 2029 second round pick is what they get with Oklahoma City right now. I just don't think they should be worried about acquiring assets. In fact, I thought that maybe they kind of stay pat and make a small move trading Bazley away to a team like Indiana or a team like San Antonio that was looking to take in some money. Oklahoma City has all the assets in the world. They could have, burned a second rounder and no one would even notice, right? I just don't understand their deadline, especially trading away Muscala, who's been, again, a very nice center for them this season. I thought, hey, next year they'll get Chet Holmgren in. Mike Muscala would likely be their backup big man. And they're actually, deep then. They've got two good quality big men who fit their roster. They fit the perimeter players that they have. But they decided to trade him away in what is a bizarre deal. You get 2 second-round picks in Justin Jackson's contract. Again, that doesn't move the needle for me in any way. I just don't think the Thunder got better. They actually got more expensive this trade deadline, which is something I was not expecting them to do. They came in over the luxury tax. They got even further over the luxury tax, and they did so just so they could net 3 second-round picks. I just don't really understand it. Especially since one of the guys they gave up is a pretty solid player in Mike Muscala, who I thought had found a long-term home in Oklahoma City. Clearly, he had not. Again, I liked it a lot for Boston getting him. He's not a great center. He's not somebody who's going to change your franchise. But as a depth piece, I thought he'd be a really, really nice player for a while in Oklahoma City. Instead, now they have 2 second-round picks, and it goes back to the drawing board where, okay, you have Chet Holmgren, and what? Do you get lucky in the lottery and maybe add a Victor Wembanyama? That's the hope, right? We'll see what the NBA script has in store for Oklahoma City, but I just don't love their trade deadline. Sorry for all the Kool-Aid drinkers out there in Oklahoma City. Here we have the Orlando Magic. I'm going to give them a C. They trade out Mo Bamba. They get a second-round pick in return and Patrick Beverley and $2 million cash. The cash doesn't do anything for me. I don't care how rich the owner is. I don't care about his pockets. That doesn't help me at all, especially if I'm a Magic fan. Trading a younger player for an older player who gets bought out immediately doesn't really move the needle either. But I do think the redeeming factor here is I think Mo Bamba is worth roughly around a second-round pick. So you didn't get negative value. Again, this is like one of those big, this is nothing moves for the Orlando Magic. They give up a guy who, quite frankly, didn't matter. The only reason Mo Bamba was in the news the last month was for chirping Austin Rivers. So it's kind of funny now that, Austin Rivers probably gets the last laugh as Mo Bamba has to pack his bags. And clearly the team he was playing on didn't really care if he was there or not. Orlando moves off Mo Bamba. It was a big nothing for me. The Lakers, I really didn't think got that much better with the Bamba deal. At least he's lengthy, has some size, right? And he's young, but for Orlando, you get a second rounder from him. You kind of wash your hands. It's fine. I don't hate it. Don't love it. Philly here, I'm going to give them a huge A. And there's a few reasons why. First of all, trading Matisse Thybulle, in a vacuum, you say, well, Thybulle's a pretty good player. I think a lot of teams should have had interest in him. I felt that way. I felt like, the Kings, the Mavericks, a lot of teams should have been interested in Matisse Thybulle. But he just wasn't a fit in Philly. Given what they have in Harden, Maxey, and Embiid, I just don't think that Thybulle's cutting, Thybulle's, lack of offensive firepower, to say the least, was a great fit. So they get off of him, and they actually get under the tax, getting Jalen McDaniels, who I think is a better fit on this roster. He shoots the 3-ball a little bit more willingly. He hasn't been a great 3-point shooter, but he's, again, more willing, which I think is very important to note. And he actually gets guarded a little bit on the perimeter. Plus 2 second-round picks, one in 2024, one in 2029. You add 2 assets to your treasure chest of draft picks, and you also get under the tax with arguably a player who fits better. It seems like a win-win-win move for Philadelphia. I like it a lot for them, just given the circumstance. I think it's a pretty clear and easy A. I love it. And although maybe it doesn't move the needle all that much for the postseason this year, it's just smart management, getting under the tax and getting a good young player who could fit around, stick on your roster while adding draft picks as well. Pretty good. Here I'm going to give the Phoenix Suns an A+. Again, this is completely circumstantial. They get Kevin Durant, they get TJ Warren, they give up the whole farm, but going into this postseason, I would not have felt like Phoenix had a shot at winning the title. I just didn't. I look at them now, and it's hard to dispute that they could potentially be the favorites in the Western Conference. I wouldn't necessarily call them that outright. I wouldn't say, oh yeah, they're going to walk through the West, But I could see them winning 3 playoff series now in the Western Conference, which I couldn't see them doing that before. Ultimately, they still have their deficiencies. I think that they're a little thin when it comes to the wings. Their guard play is going to be pretty nice, especially off the bench. Still, they have Damian Lee. They got Landry Shamet, campaign. They're not thin at guard, but the issue is they are thin at wing. Getting TJ Warren was really important. I don't love the idea of playing Torrey Craig 25 plus minutes a night. I don't know why that has to be explained to anybody. But ultimately, Phoenix, they're in a spot where you get Kevin Durant. It's kind of hard to argue you're not the winner of the trade deadline. And my grade here clearly indicates that they are A+ grade. I loved what Brooklyn got. I like what Milwaukee got. But all in all, you get off KD or you get Kevin Durant, you're feeling really good about yourself. And they actually also save money as well, getting off of Saric. This is a huge win for Matt Ishbia and the Phoenix Suns, in my perspective. Portland here now, I'm going to give them a huge A. And the only reason this isn't an A+ is because I do think that they harmed some of their credibility when it comes to future trades across the NBA because of this whole Gary Payton II drama, and maybe the idea that they were withholding medical information in a not fair way, not just way, that kind of probably harmed their relationship with Bob Myers and the Golden State Warriors. I don't think that's smart, but you look at it, they got 5 second-round picks for Gary Payton II. They also got a first-round pick for Josh Hart, and they added Matisse Thybulle. So you get younger, you get better defensively with Thybulle coming in. Plus, with Mike Schmitz there in the building, one of the few people who I actually thought at ESPN was reliable and somebody who I would have trusted with information and kind of understanding draft prospects. Now he has a first-round pick to play with and 5 extra second-rounders. This gives Portland a lot of flexibility. And I think just given the fact that Josh Hart was likely leaving in free agency, I think they nailed it out of the park. A trade for sure for them, and one that I think that they had an awesome trade deadline. Sacramento here, I'm going to give them a B, and I know this is maybe going to be shocking to Kings fans who I know they wanted a move, right? And I think Matisse Thybulle probably would have made this trade deadline an A for Sacramento had they gotten him at the price that Portland did. But given the circumstances here, getting Kessler Edwards, I think is fine. He's a solid young player, former top 45 overall pick. He's cheap. He's young. Can play with the Stockton Kings a bit. And I think the one reason why I'm not low on the Sacramento Kings here, this trade deadline, is they didn't make a big mistake. They know what they are. They didn't go out and try and push for this season. They didn't trade all of their draft picks and more. They didn't mess up and trade Keegan Murray. Kings fans, I would say don't really be too sad about this trade deadline. For the most part, I like where the Kings are headed. They're young. Fox and Sabonis are a very good pairing, as we clearly see. Monty McNair's onto something here. He's building something that is very well-rounded based on fit. Not as much talent, but more so fit. Now, they have talented players, but really the fit is what is elevating this team. And I think ultimately when it comes down to it, the fact that they didn't blow it up in a overreaction or a, hey, we got to push because the Suns made a trade for Durant, the Kings weren't going to match up with Durant anyway. So the fact that they are now at a spot where they feel this is a long-term approach, I think this is healthy for Sacramento. Very healthy. San Antonio here, I'm going to give them an A as well, just at this spot. And I think the big reason why is they did very well for trading away Jakob Poeltl. They get a 2024 first, which is top 6 protected. I like that. They get 2 second-rounders for him as well. Kem Birches, whatever. I don't care. It's just money matching. They get 4 second-round picks for Josh Richardson. Again, I think that's maximized value. They can harbor the contract to Devontae Graham. That doesn't hurt them at all. And then also looking at the deal that kind of started out the trade deadline this week was Dwayne Dedmon, 2028 second-round pick they get for taking in his money. They end up buying him out or waiving him. And now they're at a spot where they're exactly where they were before, but now they don't have Jakob Poeltl anymore. Oh no, it's not like really a big loss for them. They weren't headed anywhere with him anyway. They had 5 second-round picks, more than that, 7 second-round picks and a first-round pick for ultimately Richardson and Pirtle. That seems pretty good to me, and something I would sign off on for sure. I think given the Spurs' current circumstance, their current situation, they did very well this deadline. For Toronto, and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, I'm going to give them a C. Yes, Jakob Poeltl's a fit. We know that Toronto wanted him. We know Toronto knows what he's about because they drafted him. He was there in the building a lot before trading him for Kawhi Leonard, this, that, and the other thing, right? Jakob Poeltl doesn't solve Toronto's biggest issue. I know a lot of people look at the depth chart and say, well, they need a center who can rebound. Yes, that was one of the issues. The team can't shoot. Yeah, I know they signed Joe Wieskamp for the rest of the year. Who cares? Like, is Wieskamp going to be a playoff player? No. Is Toronto going to be in the playoffs? I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say no, probably not. So now they could be, right? They're talented enough to maybe get in. So I wouldn't completely rule it out. Will they be a play-in team? Probably. But I just don't love it. Jakob Poeltl makes them better, but does he make them better enough to warrant giving up your first-round pick for next year and 2 second-rounders as well? Yeah, I don't know. I just don't love it for them. I think Toronto relatively... Yeah, I just think they missed an opportunity selling. If you could have gotten 3 or 4 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, I would have done that in a heartbeat. I then would have traded Fred VanVleet. I would have traded Gary Trent, and I would have rebuilt this thing around Siakam and Barnes, and I feel like they could have been really good that way. Long term, I think Masai Ujiri is very smart when it comes to drafting and team building through the draft. And I think that they missed the opportunity to maximize value on some guys in what was a pretty hectic trade deadline this year. The Utah Jazz, I give a B. Just given the situation, they trade Beasley, Vando, and a 35-year-old Mike Conley, and they turned that into a future first-round pick. Very, very good job by them. Danny Ainge did a nice job. Now, given some of the reports on what we were expecting maybe could have happened, reports were, they're looking for a first for Beasley and a first for Vando. I knew that was capped from the beginning. There's just no way that teams were going to give up that much for those 2 guys. But ultimately, a B. Again, if it wasn't top 4 protected, this probably is an A. It does lower the upside a little bit on what that pick's going to become. But ultimately, I like it a lot for Utah here, and I think a B grade is definitely more than fair. Then the Washington Wizards. Wizards fans, I'm sorry you stuck with me this whole time just to get to this spot where I give your team an F grade. I just don't think they did a good job. I think they're, the fact that they didn't really make moves. They traded Rui Hachimura, yes, for 3 second-rounders. That whatever, right? I don't care. Tommy Shepard, the F stands for fire. He should not be the GM of the team. That team is not in a good spot right now. They should have traded Kyle Kuzma, in my opinion. I know Wizards fans are going to push back on that. Okay, cool. Be the 12th seed every single year then. I think they should have looked at trading Porzingis. I think that they should look at trading Beal. If I were there, I'd burn the whole thing down and start over. I know it's easier said than done. I know that, you want to tie yourself to a player. You want to have a franchise player. You want to have a reason for fans to come watch the game. Why come watch the 12th seed Wizards? Why? I love Porzingis. I really do. The Wizards aren't headed anywhere. The only player on their team that I'd probably want to keep around is Denny Avdia because he's young and someone who I think is going to be a good long-term wing defender in the league, which is what you need in the playoffs. Everyone else on their team, I just don't think really translates a lot to winning. So for me, I just don't love Washington's current situation. I don't think that they're in a good spot. And the fact that they were silent during the trade deadline, I think was a mistake as well. I'm going to give them an F, and I just don't think that they're in a good spot now or in the future. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well for more. Thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate each and every one of you. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on more uploads here at Utility Sports. A lot of NBA draft coverage coming up on the channel as well. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.